We would like to call this meeting to order. This is a City Council work session for the City of Kingman, held at 3 o'clock Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. As always, with all meetings, I would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand and do that, please. And I'll lead it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All work session items listed are for discussion only. No action can or will be taken. The primary purpose of work session meetings is to provide the City Council with the opportunity for an in-depth discussion and study of specific subjects. Public comment is not provided for on the agenda and may be made only as approved by consensus of the Council. In appropriate circumstances, a brief presentation may be permitted by a member of the public or another interested party, or an agenda item if invited by the Mayor or City Manager to do so. The Mayor may limit or end the time for such presentations. We did have, Clerk Meredith, we did have one person sign up that might like to speak.
Mayor, I do have a few people that have signed up at this time. I wasn't sure if you wanted to go ahead and do the presentation portion and then allow for that. I believe Manager Foggin provided kind of an outline agenda for today.
Correct, and that's what I was thinking we would do, but when that time comes appropriate, and of course if anybody else decides they would like to. Okay, thank you. Item number 1, development review process discussion. This work session will provide an opportunity for council staff and members of the construction community to follow up on their discussion from the June 6th, 2023 work session regarding the City of Kingman development review process. Turn some time over to Mr. Foggin.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. What we have for you today really is a report on what we've been working on and also kind of a preview of what we are still working towards. And so I'm going to share with you the action plan and goals that were created to help make improvements in our development services process. And then what I've asked each of the development service departments to do is basically provide for you information on what they've been doing to improve the process. And so I'm going to share what we've been working on as a whole, and then let Phil and Sean go over the items that they have been actively working on, and also share what is still to come. There's a number of items that we are still planning on putting into place as part of the improvement to our development services. So with that, I've got just a pretty simple presentation on the action plan that we put together as a team. So if we can go to the first slide. So our action plan is basically designed and a lot of it is improved communication and making sure that we are staying abreast of what is happening. So one of the things that we had said on this plan is that we were going to create a survey of the services, which we did. That survey is available, and when people complete the process, whatever process they have with our development services, they will be provided a hard copy or an electronic copy of the survey. And what our goal will be is on a monthly basis review those surveys and see where there's pinch points, where there's also there's suggestions for improvement. So we'll be talking about those regularly and putting things and we probably will add things to this list as we move forward. The next one was
Manager Foggin, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
Can you expand that screen up a little bit bigger, or can we get a hard copy? I mean, maybe a hard copy later, but anyway, I know Vice Mayor would like to have a copy.
She can have that one. I don't need it, so.
And I don't know if there's any way to expand that screen up a little bigger. Anybody else wanting? I'm sorry, I should have asked.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, it's been included in the pack, in
Okay.
what we provided, so you should have it in email form.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The next one was that we were going to do a development process and policy audit. I have identified an individual that is going to do that work. I actually identified him before July 10th. His workload was such that he's currently providing a scope of work for that audit, but we will be doing an in-depth look at our process, how that compares to other municipalities, and if in fact we are doing something that isn't best practice, our expectation is that the audit will help point that out.
Excuse me. Can you give us the name of this individual?
The name is Stuart Smelling. He was the former Community Development Director for Havasu, retired.
So he did development in Havasu?
Yes.
Okay.
I liked him because he was local and thought that a local person being able to look at our process compared to our other local municipalities would be pretty insightful.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. The next item is the development departments will be open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. That's in place. The city will share average review times for all major development process weekly. Starting the week of August 7th, we've been working on reports and understanding exactly what information we have. And so we are going to do our best to track that. We're also working on some software that is expected to go live the 1st of October that should help that immensely as well. And the public will also should be able to log in and see their projects as well through that portal. Next. So the city will provide estimated completion time for major development process reviews starting August 7th. Again, that had everything to do with us making sure that we knew what our reporting system could do. Right now, it continues to be somewhat clunky, but we feel like that is something that we can start doing the week of, well, next week actually. Engineering department will change their review process by reducing the number of written comments and adding red lines to plans. That was to begin July 10th. I actually believe that they were doing that prior to July 10th. And that continues, I think, to go well. The development department will develop review process to give prioritization to resubmitted plans starting July 10th. Basically, what both departments are doing now is there's a certain percentage of time that's spent on first review and resubmittals, and I'll let them talk to that as they give their reports. The planning and engineering departments will identify third-party providers that can help reduce the plan review time and the need for extensive examination. So one of the things that we had run into is third-party reviews that had come back that were a little substandard, that were taking up more time than they were supposed to be saving. I think those have been ironed out, and again, I'll let both Phil and Sean speak to that. And then the number 9 is that we're planning on holding the quarterly meetings for all individuals involved in the city development process. And so we will start that in the fourth quarter of this year and just plan on holding quarterly reviews, as well as we will continue to do our whatever has been scheduled on, whether it's weekly, biweekly, or monthly, with individuals in the development community as well. Next. So with that, I have some goals of working with our development departments as well. So I'm meeting monthly. I'm meeting weekly. We're holding a development leadership team meeting each week and reviewing not only what the departments are doing to accomplish our action plan, but also talking about projects and talking about timelines, anything that may be of help to move projects forward in the development community. Next is contact customers that register complaints for the development process, and also work with the departments when needed to improve when we receive complaints. The next one is I have asked the team, and we'll work with the team on, we've talked about best practices a little bit earlier, but we're looking to be able to say that we are following best practices across our policies when we're dealing with all of our services, but in this case with the development processes that the city is involved with. And then we have, I have basically made myself available for any meetings that either engineering or planning and building have with any major projects, so that I'm aware of the project and what the process that needs to be to go through that. Already have attended several of those meetings. And then help the development departments establish and trackable best practice performance measurements. One of the things that we know is if we've got good performance measurements in place, generally things are going to be going in the right direction. So we have been developing performance measurements. Those are trackable and comparable against other communities benchmarked, and so we want to make sure that we are keeping up with what those performance measurements would say that we need to be doing, whether that's on timing, whether that's in turnaround on plans, whatever the case may be. We want to be making sure that we are keeping up with what our benchmark communities are. So that's our action plan. These are the things that I'm working on. They're pretty much being worked on a daily basis. And so with that, like I said, I've invited Phil and Sean to walk you through the specifics of what they're doing to move this process in a positive direction. So with that, I think I've got Phil.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to kind of reemphasize some of the things that Ron has already mentioned, and just give you a brief summary of the things that our department is doing, and then if there's any questions that you have for me, I will try to answer those questions as best I can. So in terms of the items that we're working on, as Ron mentioned, we're now open 5 days a week from 8 to 5. With regard to some of our third-party review firms, I am in negotiations with a second firm to do plan review for us, and also have met with the firm that we're currently using now, and we've developed an improvement plan with them to help get them a little bit more on track to what we need to make sure that things get done, and they're providing the help that we need. Throughout this whole process, I've made efforts to meet with all the stakeholders, or as many stakeholders that are willing to meet, to discuss improvement strategies. That included some developers, some of the engineers, and I think those discussions have been good. As Ron mentioned, we're implementing, we call it redlining of plans. It's just marking up the plans instead of writing up the comments, with the hope that that'll provide greater clarity as to what is needed, the corrections that need to occur on the plans. We've started doing that, and we have received some positive feedback. We are also implementing a new process for reviewing as-built plans. That's primarily for the water and sewer. We're kind of handing that off to some different staff in the hopes that that will help us move through the final approval of the water and sewer system better. We've implemented an internal policy to give priority to plan resubmittals. So the bulk of our time and the amount of work is normally on the first review, but each week now we have dedicated about 30% of our time to review the resubmittals that are coming in. And we're hopeful that as we go through that, we can refine it a little bit and see if there's some changes that we can make to help get things through the process a little bit quicker on the resubmittals. And then, as Ron mentioned, we're soliciting feedback from customers whenever a permit is issued or whenever a project is approved. So we implemented that probably about a couple weeks ago, and so far we haven't received any feedback, but we are sending those surveys out. And as Ron mentioned, we're working on developing something to better provide an estimate of time it'll take to get the plan review complete. We're trying to go back and just kind of look at history and use that information to help better estimate where things are going to be at when someone resubmits. So those were the primary items that I've got on my list. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions, council, for Mr. Allred?
I just have one.
Vice Mayor?
Did you say when the third party's going to start working?
I hope to have them on board by next week. I'm just trying to get contract and
Sure.
everything finalized.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Saley?
So starting next week, according to the plan, you're going to be giving the average review times for all major processes. But what I realize, I think I just heard you say, is that's just the average of what it takes to, you're looking back historically, and if they're, approving an as-built, you're going to say that takes 6 months, and that's what it's going to be based on. It's not going to be based on these standards that we're shooting for, which is like 7 days or 14 days.
We have things that we're shooting for, but I also want to be realistic as well.
Okay.
And so I think what you'll see is it's not going to totally reflect the history per se, but it'll be a little bit of a hybrid until we can get things figured out.
Okay. In our application packet, we do give timelines, right? How long?
So
each step
on our
takes.
website, we
It's on the
have
website.
licensing timeframes posted on our website for different things.
On the 7th, will you send out an email to the council that gives us these average review times, and then also the times that we were previously kind of giving people as an expectation for what they could expect, so that we can see kind of what we used to promise and then what the actual averages are? Because I don't want to be surprised when everybody else gets them and I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, can you rephrase your question?
Sure.
Just make sure I understand what
Sure.
you're asking for.
I've seen the packet, and it must come from our website, or it's the packet that they use, that they get when they start their permitting process. And it gives you some timeframes that you can expect to get through each step of the process. And so I don't have a copy of that, but I would like to see how that compares to these averages that you're going to come out with on the 7th.
Okay.
Thank you. My other question was, you mentioned other staff doing the sewer and the water. Can you tell me a little bit about who that is and how that's going to
That,
improve?
again, that's just for the as-builts. And so
For as-built.
that's, once everything's built, the engineer submits a plan showing the field condition. And so we're trying to push that more to our engineering technicians instead of the engineers.
Okay, to hopefully get those as-bills approved faster. Okay, I think that those are my questions for now.
Okay, thanks, Counselor Saley. Anybody else? Yes, Counselor Walker.
This goes back to the early permitting. Is there an issue with engineering on the new subdivision? You know, before that's accepted, once roads are paved, water's in, does engineering have an issue with the early permitting?
I don't think so. The thing that I've been trying to make sure is that we get everything we need for the water and sewer approvals, and we definitely want to make sure that the roads are paved. The question becomes, and we've had some conversations about this, is do we wait for the asphalt testing to come back to see if there's any issues that need to be corrected and whatnot? But generally, we want to make sure that we're moving forward and that we don't end up in a situation where there's items lingering and we get too far down the road where it just becomes a problem.
Well, the developer, in my opinion, would be at risk.
Councilmember Walker, I'm so sorry. Can you please use your mic?
Sorry.
Thank you.
The developer / contractor would be at risk for moving forward like this. But I think as a city, we need to be flexible, and myself, I don't think I'd have a problem turning it loose before the asphalt testing comes back, because it's back on them anyhow. But if they need to start pulling permits and starting houses to make the timeline and the money line go together, I think as a city, we need to be flexible. Let's work on getting this done. I don't know if the hold's up in engineering or if it's in the building department, but wherever it is, I'd like it to be fixed, because I think the county's doing this, and I believe Bullhead may be doing it. Maybe we need to call Bullhead, maybe the county, and see how they're doing it.
Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of conversations with the county.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So,
Okay. Council? Thank you, Phil.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Once again, I'm just going to provide for you kind of the things that have been going on in the Planning and Zoning and Building Department to help achieve the goals and stuff we have. One of the big contentions is the actual zoning code. That list has been compiled. Within the next week, I'll be reaching out to developers again to make sure, sending that list out, saying, hey, this is what we have. Is there more stuff, so that we can make it a comprehensive list and get it done as quick as possible. I currently have the staff report for that. It's about halfway complete, and then we'll begin the process to get those parts of the code updated, changed, and everything else. Just a little rundown on what that process is. We have to treat ourselves as a city the same as we would a citizen if they were to put in, so I will be doing the same application process and everything that they would do. Then it would go through a series of hearings, public hearings with the Planning and Zoning Department based upon their recommendation of what we present to them. We will then bring it to the council for the final approval and any direction with any of that stuff. And then obviously based upon that, we'll make the changes and just keep moving forward. To the point of the early permits, I have been in contact with the county, and currently right now what we have in place is the same as what the county has. We are doing and providing the same thing as what Mojave County is providing. Phil and I have been in discussions on how we can make that process better for the developers, how we can move that to where we're allowing more time. One of the things does have to do with the asphalt and absolutely allowing these early permits to occur prior to those tests and things coming back. So essentially, if the water and infrastructure and things like that are in, building permits would be able to go out. So we are working on that. We have a meeting scheduled, I think mid next week, to where everybody's sitting at one table, so that we don't have one person talking to another person, so that we're all there, so that we can be on the same page and get that information out to the developers. So depending upon how that goes, I would say probably the end of next week, we will have a revised policy that would go out. And that's what I'm shooting for. But again, that depends upon how things go in the staff meeting that we have next week. So another one of the issues was recorded surveys having to have been recorded, a final plat or a survey within the last 3 years. I had some discussion with some of the developers in that we honed in kind of where the issues were with that. So that's been extended out to 10 years with the caveat that the property pins have to be in place at the time of inspection. So that will help with that process and not be holding things up in the process as well. Let's see. So we have filled the vacant position that we had in the planning and zoning department. So that's working out pretty well thus far with our candidate that we've hired. So that again is going to be training, getting them up to par in how we're doing things. And one of the things that I've noticed is that some of the things that, you know, every day we get into the everyday way of doing something, and when somebody new comes in, they start suggesting new different ways that actually help the process. So that's a positive aspect that's coming from this. I've also I have two separate contracts for planning and zoning reviews. One is one that we talked about. It's with Rich Ruggles. So we can confer with him. We can get information from him. He's actually doing reviews and such for us. That's working out very well. And then I've hired another third party who has, to this point, done quite a few reviews, which has helped us to get to where we're not behind in those reviews. So we're, at this point, I would say with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 of the cases, we are at a point of where we need to be. So the plan is those third parties are going to, they can be assigned something as soon as it comes in, as opposed to us having to wait for that slotted time with our planners that are in-house. So the plan is to help that process continue moving forward. So that's where we're at with that. And let's see, as well as the secondary or the second review process, right? Phil and I have discussed that. We feel currently right now, while we're trying to get a gauge for how it works, that we kind of have the same policy when it goes on with that. So again, we are dedicating 30% of our time that we have for reviews to those second submissions as well. So again, I think that's going to be kind of a, let's get some data from that to see if that's really truly speeding up the process or not. If it's not, we're going to reevaluate. We're going to figure out how to get the stuff out faster, right? And when I say faster, I don't mean just rubber stamping things and getting them out, because that doesn't do anybody any good. So that's where we're at as far as that goes. And that pretty much concludes where I am at with some of the things that are on the list. Of course, there's still more stuff to work towards and become better about. So, is there any questions?
Sean, right away, I have one. Actually, it was brought up by one of the developers. Let's say they go by a plat, and you mentioned plat and pins, and that's why it brought to my memory that if it's a 20-year-old subdivision, it was platted, what are the guidelines now for them buying that? I mean, when they've bought it, they're starting to make investments on it, they want to develop it. what changes come into effect? Are there changes that come into effect?
So there are, and that's actually one of the things that I am going to look at in the code, right? And that's one of the things, because essentially the way that worked is the new code, when it was adopted, it took all of the plan developments, all these things that were there, and categorized them into one single, if it doesn't, try to take everything from those and make it average between all of these different subdivisions and things, to where when it comes to fruition and the subdivision's going to be built out, they would have to comply with what those things are. Now, I don't know that that's the best way to have gone about it. My feelings on that are a little bit different, especially if something's been already approved by the council and things like that. So we are in discussions. I have discussed that with some of the developers for the subdivisions and things like that. So moving forward, that's something that we are planning to address, and again, it's how to rewrite the code to where it still allows that, right? Because currently, right now, the code does not. So we follow the code, and if the code doesn't say to do that, and I were to allow something to happen, I'd be going against the code. So we just have to find that happy medium between all of that, right? And so that stuff moving forward. I think we can come to a very reasonable, I guess, happy medium.
So you're trying to put some flexibility into the code.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to do, because if we build a subdivision and it doesn't comply with the current code, well, we're not following our code, right? And that's in the way that the code reads, to look at that is irregardless of what council has approved previously, right? And I don't feel that to be appropriate. However, well, obviously conversations are going to have to be had with Carl and legally how we can approach that and do that to make those changes in the code, so that we can make that easier to move forward in these old subdivisions. Something else we actually have begun to do with that as well is just seeing where we're at with it when it comes to these subdivisions that haven't been built out. How many of those do we have? Like, what are the things that are in common within these subdivisions and things like that, to where maybe we can address this without going the big long process, if that makes sense. So
I appreciate that consideration and flexibility.
absolutely.
I mean, looking at that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Council, questions for Sean?
I have some questions.
Vice Mayor?
The online plan submittal system,
Mm-hmm.
is that still due to come online first part of October?
Yes.
Okay.
We currently, right now, we are absolutely on track, and I just got word today that there's some things that have been put in motion on the software side to hopefully speed some of that stuff up. We've moved quite a bit of the stuff, and the company has changed around their schedules and reassigned things within their company in order for us to be very sure that we are up and running by October 1st.
Okay, and so the way I understand that program is as it moves along or gets pushed to other individuals for different things, it's going to timestamp it and send notifications so everybody knows where
Correct.
in the process they are.
Correct.
And they're going to get notified via email notification?
I'm not sure exactly how it's going to notify them. We should be able to, so we're not quite to that public portal section, so I can't say 100% for sure. Those were questions that were asked, and we were told, yes, absolutely, we'll be able to send email notices out to, whether it be me, that a review's been assigned to me as a reviewer, or whether it's the applicant, or the different parties that are involved. And I do know that the way the portal side works is that will essentially be whoever the applicant decides to be the people that are on there that will have access to that, right? They should be there. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be able to get that done automatically. Okay. If it's not done automatically, we're just going to have to do it.
Okay. And then we're also going to be able to establish a better timeline as to when we push it back out to the developer builder, as to how long it sits before it comes back into us when
Correct.
we received it for the next part.
We'll be able to better track actually how much time a plan is in the city's possession to take action on, right?
Okay.
Because in some of this stuff, there's a lot of back and forth to where comments go out. the developer or whoever they've hired then takes the time that they take to do what they do, then it comes back to us, you know, and that type of thing. So we will definitely be able to have a good data on that to be able to see exactly how much of the grand scheme of time that's been in the city's possession to take action on.
Okay. My other question is on these pre-application meetings. I'm hearing that it's taking quite a while to get them even scheduled to happen. So can you, is there a plan for this?
Yeah, so the issue that comes to play in the pre-application meetings, right, is it does take, because what we've done as a city, we have said, okay, Wednesday afternoons are what, as a city team, we're going to set aside to do these pre-application meetings, right? Well, when the amount of applications that come in supersede that time that we've set aside, right? So it's most likely we're gonna have to increase the amount of time that we're allotting to this on a weekly basis. Because there's so many applications that are coming in for this, and of course that conflicts with everybody's schedules, right? So it's a set time. Hey, we will currently right now it's from I think 1 p.m. on Wednesday till like 3 or 4, right?
And does every department set aside that time? The reason I'm asking this is because it's leading into my next question. So
Okay.
I've recently had a meeting with a developer, and he talked about the process at the county where they all got in a room and they all sat around and they had all the departments there.
Correct.
It wasn't optional for the departments. Everybody that was involved in that project had to be there, including legal, if necessary.
So-
They walked out of that room and they had a clear, concise plan as to what needed to happen, and that saved a lot of unnecessary meetings.
Correct. So currently, the way that works is when all the parties that are involved, right, as far as staff that are involved in a pre-application meeting, is there's a representative from building, planning, fire, engineering, and I believe that's all of the major parties that would be involved in any of that review or any of that. And we do go over and give those expectations and such in the meeting.
So is it optional that those departments attend? Because I'm
It is.
also hearing from several that there are times where not everybody shows up. So it kind of defeats the purpose of
So,
meeting if
right.
you're not going to show up.
So I would be interested to know whoever that is. I would be interested to know who's saying that, because you have to remember I represent a lot.
Yeah, no,
So-
I'm happy to give you
So
details.
again, when I go there, depending upon what the project is, a lot of times I'm the representative for building, for fire, and for planning and zoning,
Okay,
right? So it may not seem like there's a lot of people at the table. Well, I'm the one that's making those decisions based upon what needs to happen and move forward within those.
okay, perfect. And then my other question, so did I hear you say that the survey documents that used to only be good for 3 years is now good for 10 years? Has that been the change?
Yes, we are accepting them, right? We're accepting a plot plan that's been recorded within 10 years or a survey that has been recorded within 10 years.
That's as long as they don't change the plans or the measurements, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if any of that happens,
So,
then,
well, let's go back. It's not the measurements, right? So the state statutes, when it comes to surveying, require that those survey pins be placed by somebody who's certified to do so. And if those pins are in place, then we won't have any issues. But a lot of times what happens is, and we've had this issue and we worked through some issues when it comes to utility companies. They'll come in and they'll just knock out a pin, and what happens is by the time we get there to do our verification, those pins aren't there. So we're having to say, well, no, you're gonna have to have that reset and this and that. We've worked with some of the developers a way to move that pin to with some different types of markings and things so that we can still verify it.
okay. My final question. Have there been any changes in priority of projects that have been sitting for any great length of time? Like in this plan and goals of what we're doing, are we trying to get those projects finished up and out so they can get,
Correct, yes.
Developed.
So I can say, and I can speak, a lot of the holdup within my division is in the planning and zoning department. And so start of that is, let's get us up to par. We're up to par with our projects right now. So currently we have, I think, as far as subdivisions, so right now subdivisions, I think, is probably what we need to have as the most important project, right? With that, currently right now we have no subdivision reviews that haven't come in within the last week or two that we need to do reviews on, right? And so the subdivisions that have come in, those are going to be sent out. If they, I'll have to look, but I'm pretty sure all of them that have come in, except for one, it came in last Friday, has been sent out to the third party. So the time that it takes them to do it, which is going to be most definitely faster than what we would be able to do, it was going to keep that ball rolling. So as far as that goes, that's kind of where we have set the priority, is that's what we're using the third parties for. I feel we do need to look at some of the priority in-house, right? And that is going to, we'll be able to get that ironed out once our new person is up to speed a little bit further than, I think we're about a month in.
okay.
So
I'd like to request a report that shows what is in process right now, and I'm looking for anything that is, well, let's say a year and a half or more, that's just sitting. I mean, it may be held up at the city, it may be held up with the developer. I'm looking for some kind of report that will tell me that, because I'm just getting information, one project 3.5 years, one project 1.5. You know, one project we weren't even aware of, so that had been submitted back in April. So these are some concerns that I have, and I would like to have some kind of reporting. I know you guys are doing a lot of reporting, but you know, I'm being told that there's 3,000 lots out there that are, or not 3,000. What was the number? Can't remember. 300? 3,000? Yeah, 3,000 lots that can't be built on, but they're sitting somewhere in either our system, or that's a lot of building permits. That's a lot of sales tax revenue. I mean, we need to start looking in dollar numbers and kind of have that mindset. So I would like to request that, please.
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions for Sean? Councilor Saley.
Yeah. So let's start with your comment about our early permitting being the same as the counties.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that the developers are not feeling that it is the same? What do you think the hiccup is there?
So I don't know what the hiccup is. And as I stated in our last meeting, I think some of the hiccup was me, right? Specifically me, you know, this is a new process. I wanted to be sure that I wasn't doing something. So I want to make sure that I was aware that if I was giving the okay for something to occur, that there would be no hiccups based upon what our policy is. So I believe at this point there's only been 3 instances of where we've issued that. Again, that's, and each time we have done that, I've been more apt to do it knowing the things that I need to know, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So issuing the agreement, I think, is where the hiccup has been, and that is my responsibility to do so, and I will full-heartedly say that's what the delays were. I don't have any qualms with anything of where we're at, and knowing that, hey, once we're at this point, it's a done deal, right?
Do you have a good working relationship with Tim Walsh over at the county?
I know Tim. I grew up with Tim, but as far as working, no.
Okay.
We will, right?
Okay. I think he's such a great wealth of knowledge and
Absolutely.
such a great guy to work with.
No, absolutely, and that was kind of when the subject came up of us it being extremely or way more difficult that's why I'm the one that reached out to the county, and I'm the one, I reached out to their planning and zoning manager, as well as their building official, their chief building official, and the process that they're doing is the same process. Now, if there's one particular thing in there that we're doing different, the overall process is the same. Now, I don't know if they're requiring any type of agreement or contract or anything like that, like we are. And the reason why we do that is that protects us as city employees, as well as, the city as a whole. So there are, and I've identified that there are ways for that to occur a lot faster than what it is and has been.
So I think what am hearing you saying is it's a matter of execution on
Correct.
our end. While it might
Correct.
look the same on paper,
Correct.
we just haven't quite.
And like I said,
got
I
there
didn't
yet.
ask the questions if they required an agreement. The reason why I didn't ask that question is because, as far as my thoughts are, that's not something we're going to change, but the execution of that, absolutely. And that is fully on me.
Okay. And then about the pre-planning meetings, are you saying that you're seeing an increase in the amount of requested meetings for these?
We have, right?
Okay.
We have, and it was identified as, okay, well, because before we go into those meetings, we have to look at this stuff and prepare for
Sure.
this stuff to go in there to be prepared. And it's the amount of work and or workload that we have, and then you add this in there on top of having to do plan reviews and things like that to be prepared to go into those meetings. We only have a week prior, right? So intertwining that with our current workload, and so we had to set some sort of limit to where we can go into those meetings prepared to give the information we need to give.
Sure, I understand that. I just, I'm even more concerned now hearing that we are starting to experience an increase in a request for those meetings because we have this bottleneck as it is right now. And if you're going to put more demand on the system when we haven't figured out how to fix this system so that things run smoothly and quickly. So if you've got more coming, then we're going to be in more trouble than we are today, right? So I mean, I just wanted to point that out, as it sounds like we've gone from they used to be able to call and come the next week to now many weeks out. So there is an increase in interest in building and developing in Kingman, and that means that we really need to get this sorted out. Also about the pre-planning, and I know it's not you, it's multiple departments, but I believe that it is bad business for us to make an agreement and then, whether it's years later or 6 months later, going back on that agreement, unless it's something that is going to be a serious detriment to the neighborhood or the community. So if we have to change the code to allow for these old subdivisions or old projects, I don't think it's just the subdivisions, I think it's projects as well. They're older, they were before the change. We need to do that really quickly so that we can give a certain level of service, and keep our word, because it is bad. It's bad business to say, here's what it's going to look like, and then they come back and we go, just kidding, it's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars more to add all these new things. How can you make an investment into a project thinking it's one thing, and then come back and your profits are going to be significantly cut, because we changed the code? That's not fair to those investors. So I want to make sure that we look at making those changes quickly so that it doesn't continue to impact these old projects. We want to get them through the system. We want them to start building. We want to have those benefits. We talk about having housing issues. We have issues like hiring police officers that are going to move here because they can't find a house. There was one specific instance where somebody ended up working for Bullhead PD because they couldn't find a place to live here. And that is, I'm sure, impacting us time and time again. We just don't always hear about them. And so I want to make sure we're getting these homes built. I want to make sure we're getting these commercial projects built that are giving us retail sales tax. Really important. And I know we've said that over and over again. That's why we're here. But I just want to put another exclamation point on there. It's really important.
Absolutely.
And I know you, and I will say, I know you guys are working hard to make these changes, and I want to keep going until we get there. And if you need additional help or third parties or whatever you need, we've got to hear about it. So collectively, we can make these improvements for our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes. Counselor Savage.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Sean. I don't know if this is a question for you or for Jack. On one of the surveys, it states, and I don't know the truth to this or not, that we're charging water fees on a property when the water meter has not even been set yet. Is that true?
I'm not sure how that occurs. However, I don't think anybody that is in this meeting right now that would be able to answer that.
To answer that.
Actually, Mr. Allred's coming forward.
Do it, Phil.
Bill?
I was gonna say that's Tina. You could have just jumped on board, Phil.
So when it comes to the water and wastewater capacity fees, those are charged at the time that they apply for a meter or for a building permit. So if they're coming in for, if they're coming in from the county asking for the water meter, we take the money and then we issue the work, or finance creates the work order to install the meter. Similarly, if they're coming in for a building permit within the city limits, they'll pay the water and wastewater capacity fee when before the permit's issued.
Got it. What's the average time of when a water meter is requested to when it gets installed?
That is a question for Public Works, but we normally tell them about 20 business days or something to that effect.
Okay, so it's not terribly long. Okay, thank you. That's all I got for now.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, Sean, I think,
Any other questions?
other comments or questions? Counselor Walker, you look like you have something.
It's not really a question, but a comment. When we're talking about, I think we're talking about subdivisions.
Microphone, please.
We're talking about subdivisions, timeframe. Let's say somebody brings a final plot in, it's accepted by the city, and it sits on a shelf for 10 years. Now, when they come back in and say, we're ready to construct this subdivision, is that where we're having an issue right now?
I believe that, well, we're having many issues when it comes to subdivisions,
'Cause I
but
understand if
I would say that is one, yes.
Okay, I understand if they haven't brought it in for the final plat, for final approval, where things could change, where we want a wider road, we want this, we want that, but if it was accepted and they just haven't built it yet, I think we need to have some flexibility to say, because that's where I know there's a lot of subdivisions sitting there ready to build, but when the economy fell, people just shelved them. And so if they got to go back and rebuild it, now I understand if they didn't finalize it, because I have a buddy that did that, and, you know, he's calling me going, I said, hey, you should have finalized it, because now, you know, he has to make the roads wider, he's going to lose a lot or two. But if it was finalized and accepted, I think we need to have some flexibility, and I just wanted to make sure that's what we're talking about, correct?
Yeah.
Subdivisions that have had a final approval,
That-
plat approved.
That definitely is something that has been brought to light. I know there's been quite a bit of discussion when it comes to that, right? And I think my opinion on it is I agree with that. However, what we run into is the code doesn't agree with that, right? So again, that's where we have to dive into there and say, what do we need to do within this code that allows this to happen? I know one of the things that we're doing is taking our master list of subdivisions. We know which subdivisions are there that have been approved by a council but haven't been recorded and things like that, and looking at what those parameters are so that we can have a better idea of what some of these things that we're going to run into are going to be, so that we can be clear and upfront with them from the beginning. I think that's something we've failed at. But again, it's been brought to our attention. We are looking at those. I did locate that, or I did look at that master list of all the subdivisions that we've ever had, whether they're completed completely, whether they're currently under assurance agreement, whether they're, have been approved by council but not recorded, whether they've been recorded but not completely built out, and all these different things. So yes, we are looking at that and trying to come up with the best way to move forward with that as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Sean, appreciate all of the energy and information that you've shared with us. You know, most importantly, I appreciate you owning some of the hiccups.
Absolutely.
That's anyway. And hopefully, we've been able to revise it. It sounds like we need to needs to be some revision on the code, so it works for both of us, for everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Thanks. I'm sure
right.
we'll hear from you again.
Thank you.
Comments and questions?
So, Mayor,
In
can I
general?
just kind of make one comment about some of those old plats?
Yes,
I mean,
Mr. Cooper.
there comes a time when the changes that the city has made are, you know, it's not just necessarily aesthetics, it's going to be public health and safety. So there's a concern about if we're going to, even though it was approved 10 years ago, there may be some flood issue or drainage issues that we need to address now that maybe something has changed. And honestly, I know my recommendation would be to actually have the council get rid of all those old plats and require a new one after you set a date. I don't think that'll happen, but I think that brings them up to the standards that are set forth today. Just letting you know.
Well, Mr. Cooper, you bring up a good point because of the fact that I know all of us as council members received complaints last year when the monsoons hit and there was flooding, and a lot of people tried to put the blame on the city and some of the things that were going on, so that you bring up a valuable point. Okay? Mr. Foggin, we do have 4 individuals that would like to, so.
That's
you wanna
the
do that and
spot, that's the spot on the agenda for it.
Okay, we'll do that. If we'd like Dan Delmonico, if you'd like to come forward. And are we going to put a time frame on this, council? What are you thinking? We do, about an hour, yeah. Yeah, Dan, you're not going to take over an
I
hour.
won't take more than 2 minutes. I just, thanks Keith for inviting me and letting me know. I want to, probably start off and say cautiously optimistic that maybe there are some changes happening that need to happen. I mean, these guys are big fish. I'm not. I'm just a little guy in here, and I think half of the council's heard my complaints about the issues that I have. So I guess I would just say this. I mean, and you guys know it, if any of your businesses ran this inefficiently, you'd be bankrupt. And I think that's just the case. You talk about the dollars. I've got a small project, and I've had to pivot a number of times. I mean, I'm out 130 grand in the last 13 months. I mean, that's real dollars out of my pocket that I had to fund that I'm never going to get back. But it is what it is, and kind of a learning, chalk it up to a learning experience in that front. I had lunch with Toby Cotter, who's the city manager of Bullhead City, probably in the last 12 months, and asked him, I go, Toby, what are you guys doing down there that, to expedite this? And we had some really good conversation, but it almost seems like the city, and I'm not going to sit there, they're going to say that they're, the best in the business, but it's almost like they were wanting to develop and wanting to grow and wanting to do that in a manner that made sense, right? That's not irresponsible development, which I can agree with, but it doesn't seem that's maybe been the case within the city in the last several years. So you start looking at stuff like interchanges, congrats on the 20 million. I mean, that's pretty impressive. But as this stuff starts to grow, these guys coming in are not going to sit through this mess. They're going to go down the road, and I think you all know that. So the last thing I guess my last parting comment would be I'd heard the use of averages a couple of times. As a numbers guy and a banker, I wouldn't use averages. And I would leave you with this, that for those that know Robert Reich, he was, I think, Bill Clinton's labor secretary, but Robert's about 4'8", and he talked about the use of averages, and the average height between him and Shaquille O'Neal was 6 foot. So the use of averages on timelines to determine stuff is probably not right. You probably need to set hard numbers and hard lines and say, how are these being met? And if there's, give them time. I mean, if they need 60 days, give them 60 days, but you can't turn a 60-day project into a 120-day or 180-day because there's real dollars, right, Jamie? I mean, there's real dollars at stake. So that would be my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks. Dan?
Dan, hold on, I got a question for you.
Oh, yes, sir.
Where are we at with your project? Or is the city holding you up at this point, or have you changed direction that you're waiting on new plans?
Yeah, so Ken got a opportunity the other day to stop by and look at some stuff. Yeah, I honestly, we've had to we've had to move it. You know, we had to move my wife's furniture store, which I would put on the record, nobody ever get in the furniture business. It's absolutely the worst thing to do. But we've had to do that. You know, that's $30,000 in cost just to get that to the spot where we need to be on a buildings that I bought. I mean, I own the old Mojave Eye Center buildings. The one building is a detriment. I mean, I think everybody agrees with that. I mean, we're going to renovate that and go through there. I mean, it's probably $2 million project, $2.5 million project. And I just, we couldn't get any momentum going, and I can't continue to fund, you know, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 a month. So we've had to pivot to try to change so we can keep that business going, generating tax dollars and that kind of stuff. I think Sean and I just had a conversation, maybe we're gonna meet Monday and try to see where we stand with some of the other stuff though. Appreciate you asking, Keith.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Travis Pennington.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. There's been some improvements, right? And I mean, over the last couple months, the tone from some departments has totally changed. Actually, all departments, the tone has changed, right? But sometimes I wonder, is this really an organic fix, right? Is this an organic fix? Was this an organic desire of staff to fix these problems, right? Because this started as politics, right? The reason we're here today is because it started out political. And I'd like to have city staff that is intuitive enough to see these problems coming. The problems that we're talking about have been years in the making, right? And so I feel like you pulled out the hammer, the politics, and we're having this improvement right now. But I hope when everybody goes back to work and pick up some hammer belts and goes back doing what we do, that we just don't get back to where we were. So yeah, I think this is an update meeting, right? I have seen the tone has changed, right? We had a meeting yesterday with the city manager and the city engineer. They listened. It was the first meeting where I probably got to sit down with the city manager and go over the nuances of a project, right? Like, this is the project, this is where it's located, this is the particular problems we have. And that's what we need, right? We need somebody that we can work with, that we can trust, doesn't mean it's going to turn out. Most of the times I could imagine it's not going to turn out how we dream it's going to turn out, right? But we need somebody that will listen and actually care, and then be able to, I think there is compromises, right? I hear the tone of Carl and about these old projects. Well, that's not the boat we're in right now, right? We have a lot of old projects that have established right-of-ways. If you were to take those entitlements away and say, no, you got to do the new right-of-way standards, you wouldn't even fit, you wouldn't have the number, you wouldn't be able to fit the project, right? So I just think on some of these old projects, what we're asking is for a compromise to be considered, but also somebody that cares enough to be able to sit down and listen to the nuances and listen to our stories and make a judgment call that can be trusted. So, thanks, guys.
Travis, I appreciate your comments. Oh, do you have a question, Vice Mayor?
Trav and I have I didn't know if Tyler was
Be
going to
happy
speak.
to answer any questions.
How many projects do you guys have sitting?
That's like a tricky question, right?
Yeah.
Don't
give me an average.
I mean, I don't know. We have probably within the city limits of Kingman, we probably have 6 or 7, 8 projects total that were at various stages, right? We just finished a project phase at Kingman Crossings. We just submitted another phase at Kingman Crossings. We submitted a revised preliminary plat on Kingman Crossings. That's one.
So of those 6 to 7 projects,
yes.
what is the range of time that you feel has been delayed for you in one way or another?
I would say our Achilles heel has been drainage, right? I think Phil would agree, right? Most of the problems that you deal with every day are drainage problems, right? So I don't want to discard. So we have a Phase D, Kingman Crossings, that we have approval in our hands right now, but that was about 2 years in the making to get to that point, right? And I can't, I can't just say that was all city, right?
That's not the
we had another
yeah.
moving part called the Unisource Electric, and they have been somewhat of a cog in that wheel. So, but that was a long, extensive drainage study review. Do I have a moment? Yeah. Right. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
Kingman Crossings we purchased probably to the tune about 2018. We started negotiating with Bill Nugent to buy Kingman Crossings. And at that time, a guy named Mike Pryor at the city of Kingman was an engineer, and he generated a memo that basically, it was the history of what Kingman Crossings was, how it got there. It was where it sits today and what needed to be changed in the future, right? So in that memo, we purchased it based on what was in that memo, right? That there wouldn't need to be, that subdivision was originally designed with very few drainage retention ponds, right? But based on that memo that was generated by engineering in 2018, we thought we would be able to move through those phases and develop those phases with no additional retention needed until we got to phase 5. I'm not saying whether that was right or wrong, but we made financial decisions based on that, right? Purchased a subdivision, and then we've been slowly and painfully redesigning each phase to add retention to each phase. And so that process has taken, I mean, the last drainage report that I think we submitted, I think it was 700 pages. Is that? It's a big binder like this that costs tens of thousands of dollars to come up with. And then it takes engineering a long time to be able to review that and make sense of it and find out, is your retention pond appropriately sized? So those are some of the nuances that we talk about, right? That's why some of this takes a long time. So I don't know if that
Well, the
necessarily
purpose
answered
of the
question.
exercise, number one, I wanted to know how many projects you guys have going. I want to know, like, let me know
Right, I mean,
how long they've been in
Kingman-
process.
Kingman
and if-
Crossings is 1,000 lots, right? Just to put
Right.
that in perspective,
Right.
right? That one project is 1,000 lots. That's what we intend to build there at that location.
And I'm not here to say it's the city's fault, the developer's fault. I just want it out there because I just feel like we just need to start putting some priority on some of these things to start getting development done. And I think that's the purpose of this meeting, and is how can we do that? And so it's nice to hear that there's some improvements. That's always great to hear. So we have some work to be done.
Sometimes we joke around, like, look at these, sometimes it feels like we're playing Where's Waldo with the city, like a really expensive game of Where's Waldo. And I just feel like if we could talk better, right? Like, if we get this project, nope, your guys' idea of adding no retention isn't gonna fly, but look at putting a bunch right here, right? Give up 7 or 8 lots, rather than us have to play, I mean, if we can get away with giving up 2 lots, we're gonna obviously give up 2 lots, right? And so it's that expensive game of Where's Waldo, and I think communication and having staff that we can trust and having a rapport, it's both ways, right? So
my final question for you is, do you have project meetings? I'm assuming you have project meetings on these projects.
yes, yeah.
Are they effective? Could they be better? Is there something there that where you left the room and you felt like this project is moving along?
Yes, I mean, I'm gonna say that those meetings are helpful in the most generous terms. And then many times, it would be nice to be able to get an answer, right? And it's not necessarily the answer. Sometimes the answer is no, right? But be able to get there and get that in that meeting rather than 2 months later, right?
Okay.
And maybe that's just the nature of development. Maybe that's not always an option. But
Okay.
many times what takes these projects is we need a particular answer to be able to resubmit, and maybe the finding of that answer takes a few months. It could take a couple months. So.
Which is causing you time and costing you money, so.
Right, I mean, I think if you
you know.
just take all the personalities out, I think everybody in this room is saying it feels like it's difficult, and it doesn't just feel like it is difficult to build here, right? And numbers are hard, right? Rules are sometimes nuanced, right? So and if that's the case, right, if it's our engineers maybe we need some coaching, right? If there's this one thing we do every time and it feels just like maybe you need to sit down and train us, right? So we can get better, like we can submit as-built that only need one review, right? Because we're getting it right. And so I don't want to just throw this all like, it goes both ways, right? But it starts with being able to have some rapport and being able to work with people.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Wait before you go.
Wait, Travis.
Since
Counselor
you
Staley.
brought this up, about the communication and about working together and trying to get more in sync so you don't have 4 reviews, right? You have 1. I think it goes back to, you sit down on these initial meetings and you get a list, and this is what you're gonna have to do. And then that list needs to be very accurate, so you know, and then as you go through the process, it sounds like what everybody needs is better communication, whether that's a timeline, whether it's changes in the project, exactly what that looks like. Would you agree with that? Those are the things that would make this easier?
Yeah, I mean, all of these issues, you're not going to fix any of them without some kind of clear, understood communication on both people's parts, on both parties' parts. Yeah, I mean, specifically, right, I feel like maybe sitting down with our engineers, Peak Profit, Mahogany Engineering, right? I feel like that we do have some of these stumbling blocks, right? Take me kind of out of the loop, right? I'm probably the idiot in the room, right? Like, can get these 2 engineers. I think Phil is an amazing engineer, right? And get him. I think he has a pretty clear understanding of what he wants and how he wants it, right? And our engineer has his ideas, right? And I don't know that anybody's wrong, right? But his opinion matters the most, right? That's the guy that gets me an approval at the end of the day. So yeah, I mean, I think a healthy back and forth, and Phil has made himself available a lot more recently to be able to answer that. Sometimes we just need a quick question, right? Like, what do we do here, right? Station 23, right? What do we need to do? So yes, we need a healthy back and forth. I think most problems are communication problems, right? Because if you're not talking properly about it, you won't come up with the solution. So yes.
Or if you don't know the expectation, you're never gonna hit it, right? You're just swinging.
It's an expensive game of, where's Waldo?
It's expensive. I know we were in a meeting and it was like a 8-figure number that the city is missing out on as far as fees and taxes, because you guys, not just you, but another developer, you guys have so many lots that you're waiting to build on and they're not happening. It's not much just money you're losing, but the city is losing out on money.
Angle Homes can build homes much faster and sell homes much faster. They could sell many, many more homes right now than what we're actually selling. And it's my department's the bottleneck, right? I'm the guy that's producing lots, and I haven't figured out a way to be able to, I don't know how to produce 400 lots in a year, right? I don't know, and if anybody in this room's knows how to do that, like, I'd appreciate some hints.
But for the record, you used to, I mean, you've been doing this a long time.
Yeah,
You really
I mean,
do know how to do it.
no, I don't. I mean,
But
I
you
don't know that there was ever a need in the city of Kingman for anybody to produce 400 lots in a year, right? We've never had that kind of
Okay.
demand from a single entity. But I think we do now, and it's just, I'm not going to teach them how to do it because I don't know. I've never done this before, but maybe I think if we have a team and collectively we can reach those objectives. And that's what we want to do. Everybody in this room has projects they want to build.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Travis, appreciate the constructive comments. Jed Noble?
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Jed Noble. I'm a civil engineer. I've pretty much just got a written statement that I want to make. So I've been involved with this development review process since April. Some of the council were there with some of the local developers. I submitted a letter for the June 6th meeting and have continued to try to involve some of you all in my discussions with the engineering department specifically. One of those recent discussions with the engineering department was related to a drainage channel. That was about 3 weeks ago. It kind of got heated with the city engineer. And coincidentally, I was recently informed that the city engineer and the city manager have filed or are planning to file a grievance against me with the State Board of Registration. So the city engineer and the city manager have been in discussions,
That is absolutely not true. I'm not filing any grievance against anybody.
have been in discussions. So this is the state board that has oversight.
Mr. Noble, I'm so sorry. Can you speak more into the microphone? They're having a hard time hearing you online.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is the state board that has oversight over professional engineering licenses. In my opinion, this is a really big deal. This is a threat to my livelihood and my employees' livelihoods. I'll be submitting a public information request after this meeting for emails and meeting agendas between the city engineer, city manager, and whoever else I think needs to be included. I'm just not sure who's going to want to participate in this development review process if this is the action that the city administration wants to take when somebody questions, the process. So at this point, my question to the city council is if the city engineer is qualified to provide unbiased reviews for plans and reports that my firm submits. The city engineer is considering filing a complaint with the state board. Should he still be in charge of reviews for that individual? I don't think so personally. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noble. I would comment, there's always two sides to a story. So we appreciate hearing your side, but we also need to hear the other side too. Mr. Ott, Kevin Ott?
Good evening. I don't think I'm going to beat a dead horse. I think we've all talked enough about what's been going on. I think you guys are starting to get a clearer picture, but I'll just tell a little story, which Chair sort of touched on already, that really highlights what I think the entire problem with all of this is and where it all stems from. And really what it comes down to is just attitude, right? Attitude. I don't know when we had the last meeting. Was it almost 2 months ago? Am I thinking right? Almost 2 months ago. On Friday, the 31st, my partner met with Mr. Foggins to kind of talk about some of the things that went on in that meeting and kind of some of our projects and where things are going. Almost 2 months after the meeting that we got any kind of effort to make to have a meeting and talk about it with Mr. Foggins. He reached out, they set the meeting up. I couldn't be there. I'll just contrast that to something that Cherish was talking about with the county. We had an issue with this subdivision that we're doing out in the county. We're wanting to get started on some of the lots, get building, although we had some engineering issues and some drainage issues that have come up on the as-builts as we're building one of the roads, and was going to hold up finishing that road. We've got to kind of tear out some concrete, and it was just one of those issues that came up in the field. It didn't match up with the way that the engineers had originally designed it or thought it was going to work as far as drainage went. So anyway, long story short is my partner reaches out to Mr. Walsh, asks for a meeting to see if we could at least kind of find out what we need to do because we don't want it to hold the project up. Mr. Walsh set the meeting up for the very next day. When my partner showed up, it wasn't just Mr. Walsh there. It was every single department in the county, the head of every single department that had anything to do with that. The county manager was there. The head of building was there. The planning and zoning guy was there. The water, everybody was there in a meeting. In 30 minutes, they had the answer. We had approval to build the entire street to get started on all of them. Get them done. We know you guys are on the hook for it. You're going to have, of course, there's obviously some rules. Hey, you're going to have to get, we will not issue C of Os until that road's done and everything passes, blah, blah, blah. But either way, at least we sat down, and in 30 minutes, we had an agreement, we had a path forward, and we were back, under construction. So now we're moving forward. That'll generate revenue, that'll generate jobs, that'll generate houses, blah, blah, blah. As you guys have heard, Angle's got thousands of lots. We have several hundred that we're waiting on and have been waiting on for years. We've got an apartment project, and we got all kinds of stuff. It's an amazing amount of revenue for the city if those things can get through. So we talk about we can't afford the interchange, we can't afford to fix our roads, we can't afford all these things we want, right? But the answer's staring you right in the face. But there's an attitude problem, and that's, I think, what Dan touched on. I think it's what Travin's trying to say. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but we all have a feeling that there is an attitude problem with the building department and the leadership at the city level where we can't get things done in an expedient manner. So you take it for what it's worth, but, one person, maybe there's some conflict there. I'll say Mr. Foggin and I have never had any communication or any interaction together. So it's nothing me personally against him, or I think vice versa for him with us. But in general, this many people can't be wrong. So I think everybody has got to go and start to put their heads together and say, why do all these builders and developers feel this way? What is causing that? Is it the code that we've set up? Is it the rules that we put in place? Maybe being a little misinformed or just not understanding what we were getting ourselves into? Or is there really an attitude that, we don't care about supporting development in this city, and we're not going to make any effort to try to make this easier on them to get projects done? I don't know what the answer is, but I think that's where it has to start, is we've got to figure out what's created this environment that is making it so difficult. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. Item number 6, concluding comments. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Appreciate my team and your effort. Appreciate the comments from the public. So I will just re-up on a couple of items that have been brought up. And I've had some good conversations with, I would say, Big Red Development, Angle Homes, also some of our contractors that had spoke, or at least one of our contractors that had spoken at the last, our June 6th meeting, I think is when it was. And I'm happy to hear that people are seeing progress, and because there is a monumental effort to improve. The one thing that I will say as far as we are willing to bring everybody to the table anytime that there's an issue. I know Mr. Delmonico, I had no idea that that you had run into any issues with your project. And I have always had an open door policy and willing to meet with anybody and find out if what we can do as an organization to move forward. The other thing that I would say is that we are going to provide professional, good customer service, development services at all times. We may not want to go on a barbecue with each other, but we as an organization are not going to single out any developer or any individual professional and not work with them professionally. That is not going to happen. It will not be tolerated. It would not be tolerated in my public works department. It wouldn't be tolerated in parks. It wouldn't be tolerated out at the utility billing counter. And so I can tell you that for the city's part in the development process, we are going to continue to look for improvements. We are going to try to find those places where we can turn plans around faster. I will say, and it's been brought up several times, drainage is 90% of the problems that we deal with especially old subdivisions. It's just drainage, and we've learned the hard way last year is a pretty damn good example of learning about drainage. The skies opened and we learned where our weak points were. Luckily, in that, it wasn't citywide. Those were pretty, we were hit hard in some areas, but didn't get it across the city all at once. But the phone starts ringing when it starts raining, and 100% guaranteed, and it doesn't really matter where it's raining inside the city. And so, yeah, I would say that the stuff that I'm aware of, it's 90% drainage issues. But if there's a problem in your development or in a commercial development, residential, and you think that we've got a bad attitude, you think that we're falling short, I got to know about it. I got to know about it. I can't, and I think I've told the folks that I've met with that we can't play this telephone game any longer, where elected officials contacted, they may or may not bring it to my attention immediately. That's not a knock on the elected officials. They're busy doing their thing and trying to do council stuff too. But when I get it secondhand, it's generally not super helpful. So if there's an issue, I think Traven had pointed out, let's have that communication. Let me know if you're running into a problem. If it's something that we control and we can look at, we'll 100% do that. So again, I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate my team and the efforts that they're making. I can tell you that they're willing to work with everybody, no biases. And we're going to take a professional approach to getting these projects out. And as much as I appreciate the story about the county, the city's more than willing to come to the table and have a conversation and get things worked out. I do want to point out that there was a comment made that a set of plans was lost. That is not true. It was in the queue to be reviewed. I want to make sure that everybody understands we did not lose plans. There may have been a misstatement, but those plans were in the queue, not misplaced. But again, if they are, I need to know about it so that I can make the corrections to make sure that we're not dropping the ball in the future. And that's what we have for you, Mayor and Council, and appreciate the opportunity to share what we've done so far. It's a very short period of time, and we recognize that, but we've got, like I said, we've got a number of items that are still coming forth. And you remember, if you look at the list, a lot of these haven't been implemented until the second week in July, and we're still showing progress. So, and it is going to be, I think the word was organic or political. It doesn't really matter as long as progress continues to be made as it needs to be made. So with that, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks to everyone that's participated here in this workshop meeting. We appreciate your comments, and this meeting is adjourned.